I'll give it, the customary 10-second wait for anyone's internet to catch up with the fact that we're live and that we're running and we're all good to go. I think it's a good needed thing. But hopefully everyone had a good, I'd say lunch break / breakfast / whatever there are, whatever you're doing in the world right now. So welcome to the keynote panel for Gamemasters Summit. It's really cool to be here. My name's Ryan. I'm head of performance marketing at Kwalee. So I've been at Kwalee for about almost 7 years now. So I think that counts as like a veteran in our industry these days, doesn't it? So yeah, good to be here. Just a couple of quick, key things before we get going. One is that I want to, from me personally, frankly, but from Kwalee as well, I just want to throw out a quick shout out to our partners for this event. So AppsFlyer, Embrace, pocketgamer.biz. It's super cool, and there's big love for the fact that we're getting support from you guys and from these places for a publisher driven gathering of minds like this. That's not very common thing in this industry and super unusual and kind of a bit innovative and interesting. Really cool to have that direct support. So big thanks for that. Just a reminder that obviously Hoover is the home of everything that you'd like to comment, ask questions, join the chat for this panel. So make sure you're involved there to kind of get the most of this. And then, so moving on to the panel itself, basically, we've titled this the keynote panel, which I know is a bit kind of like open broad in how it's titled, but the gist and that what we've kind of been talking about a little bit is we're looking at this kind of as a way to reflect a little on 2023. What were the big topics that came out of it? What have we learned from it? What can we see off the back of that year? Certainly an interesting one for our industry. And then with that, and hopefully we'll have time, I'll make sure we've got time to discuss the things coming ahead for 2024. Like, what have we seen in the first couple months, and what are we all paying attention to right now, and what are the big topics? So anyway, that's enough to start from me. I guess I'll do the logical thing and let my panelists here introduce themselves. I'll go round from what I'm seeing. So maybe Eric, if you could kick us off and give us the quick intro.
I like it when other people intro me. It's more fun to listen.
Don't be under that pressure.
Exactly. I appreciate all the context. I'm Eric Futoran, founder of kind of the triangle. I think that's why I'm on this panel of types of companies. So I founded Scopely. So I built games and the original kind of publishing business for mobile. Then also built Embrace, which helps engineers, especially game engineers, understand when experiences break down and how to improve them, like ANRs, which is everybody's bane. And then on an interesting note, I've also helped start Max. So as a ad tech veteran before Scopely, I worked with Jim and Dan and let them execute on the vision. And they got it off the ground, got it bought by AppLovin, bought back MoPub, everything to the original vision. So know a ton about ad tech as well.
Great. Nice one. Welcome. Okay, Phillip, I'll pass over to you.
Hey, I'm Phil. You might know me from Deconstructor of Fun. This Week in Games podcast. I'm one of the ragtag group of misfits with Eric Kress, Jen, Laura, and sometimes Mishka when he decides to, stop his jet-setting life. In a previous life, I actually used to work at Scopely on some 4X titles, and then I moved out here to Stockholm, Sweden to work for DICE, and then a lot of Electronic Arts titles internally, and then I went to Amazon Game Studios. Yep, they're still making games. They're still doing some stuff in Europe. And now I do consulting mostly with Game Economist stuff, which has been a lot of blast. 1/3 mobile, 1/3 crypto, and 1/3 HD. So I'm walking a lot of different worlds these days, and it's fun to see all of the different problems everyone has. Everyone has their own meta they're trying to solve right now, and it's been interesting to see how they're all playing out, particularly in the last 6 months.
Great. All right, thank you. I'm sure, problems will be the top of the topic list today, as always. Cool. Adam, passing over to you.
Well, I'm Adam. I'm Director of Product for Gaming over at AppsFlyer. It's a bit of a strange title in that gaming isn't a product by its very nature. So I'm basically looking at our product, and I'm looking at where gaming is going in the future and trying to marry the two up. Before that, I was at Product Madness for quite some years. Before that, I was in the gambling world for a few more years. And an interesting fact, going back many, many moons ago, I actually started in Formula One. I'm also the co-host of In the Sandbox With, a lovely, lovely little podcast that we do with my friend over at, still over at Product Madness, Piyush Mishra, where we just ramble on about whatever we find interesting in gaming, really. So it's conversational and diabolical at the same time.
Did not know about your F1 past. Intriguing. Cool. Javier, I'll pass over to you last but not least.
Yeah, it's always good to learn new things, right? From the panelists. So I'm happy. I've been at Google for 11 years. I used to work on the Google Cloud team initially, and then I moved into the gaming ecosystem like 7 years ago. So now I'm leading one of the gaming teams that support mobile gaming studios in EMEA. My team, I think, supports over 250 mobile gaming studios out of today, basically on the buy side, but also supporting different areas to make sure they are successful.
Great. Okay, perfect. So I'm not really one for easing people in life, to be honest. So I've kind of, let's say my first question or topic for today is something that's quite close to my heart for anyone that knows Kwalee's history and kind of how we grew. I think this is, if we're looking at 2023, there's one very significant story that stands out as something that I think we can now look at, reflect on with a lot more information and a lot more support on how things have gone. And that's really the story of how hyper casual evolved quite dramatically during the course of the year. Like the cliche, but definitely true thing is how hyper kind of evolved into this like hybrid world that many of us occupy now. But I'm very intrigued to ask this crew here of maybe the rather strong question of what you guys believe really killed or maybe evolved or forced hyper casual to change. Like old hyper casual games seem to sort of persist, but launching new ones certainly tailed off over the course of last year. What do you think caused that, and what do you think that means or says about our industry right now, and what kind of happened and evolved during the course of last year? I'm going to open this one up to the floor rather than start somewhere specific, because I bet there's some interesting views on this.
I'm happy to kick off on this. I think I think hyper casual is certainly facing challenges, right? But I think it's evolving instead of just disappearing completely, right? We see some gaming studios, at least in EMEA, that are doing great or growing actually. But I think there are a few challenges that the genre has faced. The first one, I think, is the market saturation. In the number of similar looking simple experiences, I think led to player fatigue, and it's difficult to stand out between competition. I think the second one is that advertising changes, IDFA. I think this is nothing new to anyone who is listening to us. And I think Google Play policy updates and privacy challenges are also making things harder when it comes to user targeting and ad revenue, way less predictable. And then the rising player expectations. I think hyper casual has been there for a while now, and players are increasingly demanding higher quality graphics, deeper gameplay, longer engagement, and traditional hyper casual offer in the past. So I think the what's next for hyper casual, in my opinion, is how they can adapt to change, right? Responding with innovations like hybrid casual games, and how they can combine these hybrid hyper casual elements with, deeper or bit better mechanics to monetize those strategies, and then focus on quality, right? I think we're seeing this shift to hyper casual games with better production values, more engaging gameplays, and longer term appeals, right? It's not only now about day one retention, or even day 7 retention is a bit more longer, which means that you don't want to lose your users just after a couple of sessions. Of course, we still have everything, but that's how I see this focusing. We have a couple of successful stories. I would like to mention maybe Homa. I think the attack hole hit demonstrate how well-made hyper casual games can still thrive. So yeah, probably it's not as the hype that we used to have with hyper casual a couple of years ago, but still, I think it's a gender that still exists, and some good studios can be successful.
Yeah, although I'll jump in. I think there's kind of two dynamics. One is hyper casual is definitely not dead. It's just going to be replaced by a new set of them. So I'll jump in because Homa I'm very close to. Henry, I'll shout out to Henry, the new head of Homa, who's a close personal friend from Scopely. But the Homas and Kwalee and Rolik and many others are just going through an evolution. Like hyper casual has a ceiling. And so if you're a founder or a company that really wants to grow, you can't grow purely off of hyper casual. And so those companies are being forced to evolve. And so we mix the messages. So we look at a Homa and a Kwalee, and they have aspirations for whatever reason to be a bigger company. And that means they have to evolve. And that there's no question. So I don't want to mix the next wave with the current set of companies. So if you're somebody out there who wants to build hyper casual, there's definitely an opportunity. And the reason is I think about it this way: hyper casual and ad tech are kind of on the same wavelength. So hyper casual is about day 1 and day 7, and if you're lucky, over day 7 retention. You just have to monetize within that time period. So Javi's right. Google made it really hard to monetize within, and Apple and other folks to monetize within that time period. But why I think they're on the same wavelength is, if I'm a game developer and I'm building hyper casual, like I like to hack the system. And maybe Google and Apple don't like that, but your goal is to hack and to try to find loopholes and to try to figure out how to monetize as fast as possible and to make money within that day 7 and then just rinse and repeat. So the goals are different, and maybe it's not like game developers don't like necessarily talking about it, but your goal isn't necessarily to build the most fantastic games, right? Your goal is to get people interested for enough time and then to churn through them until your game is dead. That definitely still works. You just got to figure out that UA to monetization equation. And that is definitely changing. Like we're feeling it, and I'm kind of getting ahead of other topics, but the IDFA, all the issues coming from it are definitely like being kind of solved right now. Because
I think some of the monetization is changing as well, though. Like it's moved away from ads right now, and you look at Unity and Walmart, the deal that they've done recently, where you would be able to use endpoints from Walmart to be able to enable purchases from your game. It's a different form of monetization, which I think will come in more and more over the next while as well. So I do think the whole world is evolving in this respect.
I'm a little bit more grim on the diagnosis. I mean, this has been like a wounded animal that like no one like will just go out and shoot. It's like it's just bleeding and just keeps dragging and dragging. And like the only survival mechanic is finding ways around whatever the newest UA rules are. Whether that be fingerprinting now, but like the writing has always been on the wall. If you Google like hyper casual is dead, I mean, you'll see articles from 2001 when Apple starts to like ramp up, when it starts to ramp up a lot of their ad tracking, deprecation. Still dominating the download charts. I mean, like look at any monthly download chart. Like it's hyper casual. Like when I'm trying to figure out what's hot this month, I'm like, how do I filter out all the hyper casual stuff? It's hard to figure out what's real and what's not. But when you look at it in mass, you look at all the macro stuff, clearly like year over year, it starts to decline. It's hard for me to go out and recommend developers to say, hey, you should invest in the declining market. That's usually not what you're looking for, but it's still something with a very small team that you can get something out the door very, very quickly. And it's still incredible for figuring out core mechanics. I mean, I know we're going to be talking about hyper casual stuff, but there's so much gold that hyper casual is finding, so many beautiful mechanics. There's an incredible amount of experimentation happening right now. And what I find so frustrating, sometimes like companies like Homa, when you see hole and fill, is they found this incredible mechanic and they keep killing it with ads. And there's so much more they can be doing by building compelling metas around this. There's a monster truck game that came out, last month that I was playing where, you take a car, you shoot it down a track, and then you try to attack, this statue, and over time wear it down. It's a beautiful mechanic. I just want more around it, and there's so much experimentation that no one is.
That's where the quick innovation comes in, though, because it is about churning out content, like Eric said. You're putting content out there as quickly as you can, but by its very nature, you have to become more innovative with what you're putting out there, because otherwise, people won't play the same old thing. Surely.
No, but that's not true. Like they'll still play the same old game. To Philip's point, like we've seen this story so many times. We've seen it like in 2000 when the internet became a thing in Flash-based games. Then we saw it with Facebook. We've seen it with Apple on the initial store release. We've seen it over and over. It just recalibrates. So it's not about new content. It's not about new games. I'm with Phillip on experimenting with game mechanics, but you still got to make money. And so if you're a small game team, like, screw it, release the same game if you think you can get the users and you think you can monetize it, and figure that out. Like, the best hyper casual game companies are not great game designers. They're really good at the operations of the games and how to make money off of them and acquire users, which is the core of most games. So to do full circle, like, we just go through these cyclical evolutions where somebody throws in a hand grenade and then people have to re-evolve, and we're feeling that right now.
Yeah.
So what for a lot of game dynamics, but you're just keep doing it, just get really good at the operations. And then the caveat is then you can grow into the Kwalees and the Homas because you're really good at building games and the core mechanisms about making money, acquiring users, which is game development at the heart. Then you can focus on the design. That's secondary.
So what do you think stands out then? Like, I guess those are some pretty strong examples of like the things that need to be focused on, adapted. But like, looking back, say over the last year, there are a range of games that have either been evolved from hyper casual titles that have become these more hybrid driven games, or maybe things that started with that as a pure focus. And there's some good examples. We talked about some from Homer, different things from Kwalee, or Say Games comes up a lot in this kind of topic. Like, are there any specifics? Are there things of what stands out about those games that you guys have seen or noticed, or not? Are they following like pretty traditional, well-trodden paths? Like, what's your thoughts on like actually the things that have been successful, and what stands out about those kind of hyper to hybrid games?
Find the right meta template that matches your core gameplay.
Okay.
Like that to me is the story. It isn't just find whatever you want, find whatever meta you want, slap it on. It's find the right template and pair it with the right core gameplay. You can't just slap any mechanic on any core. And when I think about for example, My Perfect Hotel, or when I think about a lot of the other games that have had success going to hybrid, they found the meta that makes sense. Collect them all, okay, let's take the hyper casual playbook and let's slap what we know works in match 3. Find the right template. And I think that's a lot of what Habi's success is finding the right template and then slapping on to the marketing success that they know. And I think you're starting to see more experimentation on like what these metas are. Like, I've been playing a lot of Weapon Master, which is again from Homa. I love these gun games, kind of these left-right gun games, and they're starting to build a little bit of these metas. You're kind of like matching this equipment and upgrading your gun a little bit. It's not quite hybrid yet, but they are still building a little bit more depth. There's kind of like some merging mechanics. So I think we're starting to figure out what templates are going to work in hybrid and which ones are not, and how you pair those with a good core gameplay.
I think that's the key. Like, for the people listening, I think Phil's right. Like, the action item is, if you're hyper casual, figure out the core mechanic, focused on that. If you're lucky enough for that game to take off and maybe to have over day 7 retention, then you start building the mechanics around it and become hybrid. But you can't start hybrid. You'll just fail because you've messed up the core kind of LTV to UA equation. I think a lot of designers mess that up. They think about the core design of the game and they forget about the operations of it. No, I'll hold back that. That's a core mistake I've seen from game companies over and over. I'll talk more about it as an investor later on.
Great. Okay, cool. All right. So in the consciousness of time, I should probably move on from my favorite topic around the hybrid casual. But trust me, I've got more stuff that I'm very keen to talk about. So keeping on a similar vein of maybe just looking back and trying to learn a little bit and pick up some of the key bits from 23. I'm interested in, like, let's talk a bit about other games and the world outside of the hybrid bubble. Last year was one where most panels I've been to, most talks you see, is a bit doom and gloom, and people definitely not feeling super sparky and happy about everything, despite the fact there's plenty of very like successful stories out there. And I guess that's the thing that intrigues me a little bit, right? Like, okay, people like me can complain as much as we want about difficult UA times, but there are like plenty of people making it work. And I just want to ask a bit about that. Like, I'll bring up some examples of, say, Monopoly Go or Chrome Valley Customs, Whiteout Survival, games that have like done very well over the course of the last year. What these are broad examples with different case studies, of course, and I don't expect us to talk about specifics today, but are there common threads? Are there key elements to what these games are doing or what these companies are doing to actually get games working in our currently apparently very difficult industry situation? Go on, Adam. I'm going to throw over to you on this case because I know you kind of have this, let's say, more holistic view of the industry based on the position.
I mean, to me, these are relatively simple in the fact that they're all good playable games. Like, they're all entertaining to play, and I do think that's becoming more and more of a thing, is building something that is actually enjoyable and not just for monetization purposes. I mean, obviously, I know that a lot of these are designed for monetization, but it is also enjoyable to play. And I think that's a big part that has been missing for a while, is really making the games enjoyable. It's something you actually want to play, and especially when it's linked with the IPs, that is becoming more and more standout for games. So in a world where I think Javier mentioned it earlier, where there's this oversaturation in a lot of the marketplace, having IPs really, it helps with the discovery, and it helps with the organic discovery, which again is a big part of this.
I call baloney on this one. There have been plenty of fun games that don't work out. I mean, Marvel Snap is garbage in terms of monetization. It's doing nothing. It doesn't even seem to be profitable. I mean, you spend all that money, hiring Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, but it's a fun game.
Ads. It's an incredible game. It's a magnum opus of CCGs. It is unbelievable what they've done in this game. I mean, I'm still playing, and every time I see a new card design, I'm like, oh my god, how did they make that happen? It's mind blowing.
Yes.
Still not making enough money to cover costs. Monopoly Go, Chrome Valley Customs, Whiteout Survival, they're marketing stories to me. Monopoly Go, what's the success of Monopoly Go? Well, if you go to Vegas, I mean, one of the most popular slots machines are Monopoly slots machines. It is commonly associated with gambling, with money, with getting rich, and they found the perfect way to pair those things together inside of the product.
Oh, come on! Look how well McDonald's did with the Monopoly.
Of course, but that was about getting rich. That was about getting money. It was a perfect fit. Same thing with Chrome Valley Customs, right? They went after a very specific market, which was older men that were into matching that they didn't feel like was being served. And again, very different scales of success. Monopoly Go might do what, 1.5 billion this year, and Chrome Valley Customs maybe 50 million tops. So that's like 10, it's like 10 Chrome Valley Customs get you Monopoly Go. And Whiteout Survival, again, like everyone needs to like hide 4X games and like secret mechanics. And we're just getting better at whatever that disguise is. But like mobile is just so fundamentally broken right now. And I say this as someone in HD right now, but it's so fundamentally broken that the only thing that matters is how you're going to solve the UA problem, in my point of view. And like, I think Monopoly Go is fun too, but like log into that game, man, and you show that to someone who isn't into mobile, you're going to be hit with 10 pop-ups of like, I got to collect this, I get an ad. I mean, there's a million things going on. And that is the Scopely playbook. That's all about monetization. And so I think the story is a little bit more complicated, but I think these are really marketing stories more than anything else. And that's the number one thing teams got to be able to solve. Same thing with hyper casual.
I fully agree. I think it's very strong marketing plus creative strategy. And they're successful stories. How profitable they are, I don't know, but I know they are quite successful in the way that they are getting millions of downloads. They're very quite popular. Everyone is talking about them, but they're also doing a really, really strong UA plus creative efforts.
I will chime in on that one. I don't think it's just marketing. I think marketing is one piece. Like, obviously, I create a machine, and then other people took it and ran with it, and the Monopoly Go team is killing it, and I give them huge kudos. IP is one piece of that. It obviously makes UA easier, but we were remiss in talking about this topic or other topics. Like, there are a bunch of people listening that have been laid off. They're looking for work for game companies to be part of. They're partially, and pragmatically, I feel for them, but pragmatically, I'm going to just say that a lot of those game companies were not built for the right reasons. They were built for the passion of the build. They love the design. They love the creativity. I get it as a founder, but and it's fun to create something out of nothing and to love the games themselves. I think that Marvel Snap is a really good example of building for design, but the games we're talking about, they're really good at the core fundamentals. Like they built around monetization, yes, and UA, yes. Like they're built for live ops and metrics. They're built to survive.
Retention.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah,
and
sure.
those are the game companies that are surviving. They're the game companies that aren't laying people off. They just may not be the game companies that true designers want to work for. And so, like, it's just the reality of the story. Like, these are businesses, they're not passion projects. And so, like, if you really want to be successful for the people out there looking for jobs, join one of those companies, like ones that, so you can learn the core loops and the metrics. So you can build a hyper casual or an RPG or otherwise. That's the core. Like, it may not be popular, but there are not that many game companies that are built to be companies. It's not about building games, it's about building businesses.
100%. I definitely, Phillip, Javier, I definitely appreciate you pushing the onus on the marketing teams. I guess my background says, cool, thanks very much for that tip. But I guess personally, I am in that vein that I think, I've come from a place with hyper casual that is a world where marketing is first, right? Like, of course. And so I do, I struggle to see how that can exist in quite the same way within these like slightly more advanced games with like, basically much more advanced systems and workings and everything that's gone into building and constructing those games. Like the idea that it would be heavily marketing oriented that drove the success of that, to me seems potentially surprising, but
I think there's more. I don't think we should I don't think we should cheapen the word marketing here. And a lot of other firms, there's this product marketing person, and it's in place of a product manager. And when I look at these three titles, it kind of hits at someone that would create something like this. They're started with a marketing thesis. Chrome Valley Customs is the best example of, like, we started with a marketing thesis. Hey, there's 50 plus men, we're playing puzzle games that no one is serving. That is a marketing thesis. And everything else gets de-risked because what did they do? Space Ape went out and they hired a bunch of ex-King people and they built a beautiful match 3 engine, but it's not that innovative. There's not a whole lot that's innovative in that game. It's running the playbook to a T and executing against that marketing thesis. So it isn't just like, hey, I got served this dish and I'm just trying to figure out the best billboard for it. It starts with like, what is the dish that's going to go best on the billboard to begin with? So it runs very, very, very deep. And I would say the same for Monopoly Go too.
Oh, 100%. I think I think the word marketing is being kind of overused here. So there's UA marketing, there's product marketing, and then there's strategic. Back when I was at Scopely, like when we built a game, we definitely started with the strategic theory and looked at marketing, looked at retention, looked at core groups. And so we would try to find either underserved or places that we could target, like you mentioned, like Space Ape did an amazing job of targeting a certain demographic, knowing that a certain mechanic works there, and then finding a way to execute flawlessly against it. Monopoly Go, obviously the same. Like, I was the first PM on Dice with Buddies that became Yahtzee. Like, Monopoly Go continued that playbook. They just made it huge, and Yahtzee continues to be huge, but it's continuing the playbook and then looking exactly at what you want to do originally. Again, not about the game design, about the strategy to find a pocket that you can build a real business within.
We're not going to talk about Dice with Ellen. Rest in peace. Dice with Ellen. The other dice game.
No comment. I forgot about that one. That's all
that for the history books.
I could see that you'd forgotten about it.
I think everyone did.
Don't ask me about some of the other ones that were in the similar genre that you guys may have forgotten about.
Amazing. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna take us a bit of a left turn away from this zone. As much as I definitely enjoy the more like in-depth discussion about games themselves, I want to go to something a little bit more industry impact wise. And I think as an undercurrent for all of these conversations, there is the fact that obviously last year really felt like the one in which everything involving Apple's IDFA changes and ATT and everything in that world started to have a much more of a real world impact on the way that people were working. But there's lots of conversation around this and there's lots of things to come this year. But something I just wanted to touch on specifically was actually the way that fingerprinting, as we've come to call it for interesting reasons in themselves, has become a very like ubiquitous system that people are relying on, especially when it comes to SDK networks. You know, that it seems like a lot of us at the moment are leaning on that, relying on it, hoping that it doesn't go away. And like, just for reference, for those who aren't aware, right, this is basically maintaining some of the older methods of tracking users when it comes to user acquisition that has in many ways allowed some of the big SDK networks out there to probably kind of increase their share or gain a bit more share of what they're doing at the moment. So I'm really intrigued to ask the group here, you know, is that a rug waiting to be pulled out? Is fingerprinting going to go away? Because people have been telling me that it's going to go away for like 2 years now, and it doesn't seem to be happening. Is that something that we in an industry are still relying on or will rely on in this year, or is that going to change? And, you know, I guess maybe I'll go to Adam first, just because this seems like a very AppsFlyer.
Thanks. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Look, I think the honest answer is if we take the whole scan box, which is obviously scan and privacy sandbox, like I'll start with privacy sandbox. Like with Google, we're working a lot closer with them. They are working very closely, and I'm not just saying this because we have Google here, but they're working much closer with the industry and trying to make the changes that they're going to employ a lot more softer for the entire industry. I think the scan changes have been interesting, and I think with the probabilistic side of it, we don't have an answer. You know, it's not like we're getting a full liaison with Apple on a regular basis, so we don't have an answer for that, and we're kind of waiting to see at the same time. The one thing I will say is recently with the privacy manifests, that is an interesting perspective on the intention of these changes, and you know, we're still trying to work through. We're releasing our nutrition labels, which the developers need to put in place, and they're going to be employing that, and that's all part of how we will be working on Apple to be, you know, from now anyway. So it doesn't really change much from our perspective. So ultimately, I don't know is a very clear answer on that one.
Yeah, that's definitely fair enough. I suppose Apple are going to be the ones that will only know the true answers there. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe Javier, if you want to weigh in on that one. I know it's you know, probably an interesting topic for you guys.
Yeah,
the approach I mean is very different.
Yeah, I of course I have no information, and thanks Adam for your comment. I think, this is personal opinion, I think it's going to take years for us to adopt fingerprinting. Unfortunately for Google, because I think it would benefit us, right? But I think the infrastructure that they need to ensure that fingerprinting is not happening is very expensive to build. From what I understand, right? So I think it's like a private thing only. Just to make sure that you can ensure that that's not happening is way too expensive, and I don't see a trade-off on the other side for Apple to enforce it. That's my opinion. And also, given that it has already passed 2 years and nothing has happened, it needs actually validate the point as well.
I'll say the controversial that Javi can't say from Google. Like, Apple doesn't really care. They have they're a hardware company that says they care about the users. I love Apple, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, they care about selling hardware. And so they release these things because it's PR and policy, and obviously they need to from a legislation and litigation perspective, but they're never going to completely squash it. Like, fingerprinting has always existed and will never go away. I built the first data management platform once upon a time, way before Scopely. Fingerprinting existed then. We just had so many data sources, we could easily fingerprint a user. That is true today. It's a cat and mouse game. Like, you squash one area and then you grab the data and you start fingerprinting again. Like, I'm sure, again, now I can say it because I'm not a part of Google or Apple or somebody risks the ire, but like, AppLovin is 100% doing it. Facebook, there's been news that Meta/Facebook is doing it as well. Like, you have to do it if you're an ad network. for buying behavior, for tracking, for everything. So it will be there. Is it scary? Yes. As embraced, I care about player experience. Yes. Don't get me wrong. Am I practical? Yes. Like, it will always exist. It's how ad networks make money. And it's more about what signals they're allowed to use and less about are they going to do it at all?
Yeah, interesting. Are you that convinced that the primary goal of ATT is the PR user facing angle as like the primary thing? Do you think like that's basically the be all end all of reasoning as to why it's happened and therefore why this has slipped?
Data is scary. Like, they still need users. They still need adoption of the phones. They still need people to use their hardware through the software. So like, you have to be concerned with fingerprinting kids, tracking users. I mean, it's scary with phones and and watches. You can track somebody. So they're definitely scared about the message and the PR and taking it too far. If you go too far, I mean, it is scary and it's something they need to squash. But from an ad tech and a UA perspective, who gives a shit?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, amazing. Well, okay. Moving then into things for 2024. Like, let's leave behind those ideas. Think about 23 and think about 24. But actually, when I say leave it behind, I want to bring up something that is future facing in relation to ATT and Apple and how they're handling these things. You know, that I think is one very sensible conclusion of the primary goal of Apple's everything they've done, is that it's this user-oriented decision about presenting a nice PR story, about having lots of privacy features. I suppose the other one that you hear bandied around a lot in the industry is that it's a play to be taking a bigger share within the ad space. But it's safe to say, you know, certainly from my perspective, and I guess I have a good view on this, you know, there's no quantifiable reality behind that at the moment, outside of maybe like a bit more search ads traffic, but like, I mean, nothing in comparison to other stuff going on. So should we expect them to finally pull the trigger, or are they actually planning to pull the trigger on an ad network or something in this vein, or will that ever materialize? Will we hear more this year? Interested what you think. I don't know, Philip, maybe if you have a view on that one, as I know you're more of a game specific guy, but I bet this is something that
only if the P&L cries. Only if the stock starts looking desperate will they go to the back of the toolbook. But I think you heard Eric say it previously. They are a hardware business. They've always been a hardware business from their conception. The software is about selling more hardware. Google's a different story. Google is a search engine, mostly an ad business. So I think they have a separate company culture. But I think for Apple, it's always been about hardware, and they're going to have to get real desperate to see that happen. And I mean, look at they're still moving units, they're still moving hardware. They try to have the subscription stuff going, which is kind of mediocre. It's not going anywhere. But as long as they're a hardware business, I find it really hard to believe that that's going to be one of their focuses. And I don't think that's been behind any of the App Store control stuff either. Like, a lot of people want to attribute Apple to some like these nefarious purposes. And I really don't think that's the case. I think a lot of the times it's genuine. And I think these things pick up momentum internally, and these enormous organizations of thousands of people, they have their own life to them. And I don't think there's as much malice as people imagine on these cases.
Yeah, I don't think it's malice at all. I don't want people to read me wrong. I'm with you. I think it's just internal politics. I'll take a sec. I agree. Like, I'll take a second. If you think about, I feel like an old man here thinking about the history of mobile. Quattro got acquired, then TestFlight got acquired, which had Burstly. They've had two swings of the ad network business. They killed it both times. The rumor is in the last batch, it was $1 billion business. Like, it's just hard to think about it this way. Like, we overreact in some ways, but Apple, if it's not making over $1 billion with high margin, they're going to kill the business. They're so massive that it actually is like a drop in the bucket, and actually pulls them down from a stock price perspective when they have low margin businesses. Ad networks are low margin businesses. So they may enter it because of just politics and inertia, and they desire to kind of control the experience. Will they stay in it? Zero chance. Just a question of how long and what timing.
Interesting. Nice. Okay. So Adam, you haven't had Apple get in touch, say, hey, we're looking at a new integration.
No, Surprisingly, no. But
Yeah,
I have to say I completely agree. I think it's too small for them. I don't think it's a viable area.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's one. I think they will have probably done something already if they were planning to do it, but I don't think at that stage it makes sense.
I think what's interesting is the Google side. Like search is being cannibalized in some ways, very slowly. It's still growing, but AI and all the other things that we can throw out are changing the business dynamics. If mobile phones are you as a user, and I'm sure search traffic is exponentially growing compared to web on mobile phones and other devices, like how will that change the ad business? To Phil's point, I don't know. It's a really interesting question. Google's gonna have to make a play, and it's just a question of what's the time horizon and when do they want to really shake the tree.
Yeah, got it. Okay, interesting. So speaking of like ad networks, and I know, probably I've talked a bit too much already about like things in relation to ad networks and maybe marketing specific stuff. But honestly, I think that these questions really are having a pretty fundamental impact on the way the business of making mobile games is working at the moment. So I think it's super relevant, not only for a marketing team's benefit, but also for the people actually making these games and how they react to how the market is working at the moment. So something very significant and big, I think, that is hard to ignore and important to talk about is, I'll put it simply, is the pretty incredible growth of AppLovin over the past year. I guess, Eric, this is certainly probably an interest point for you based on your history, but it's been an amazing growth and climb for them. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of reasons, but whoever I talk to now, almost across so many different publishers, you hear a similar story that Facebook or Google, maybe even are no longer the number one spot, instead potentially occupied by AppLovin, which maybe you wouldn't have thought a couple of years ago. Is my view on that right? Do you guys see it in this way? And if so, what's behind this, and what does it mean for how things evolve this year? That's a tough one, I'll admit. Eric, I'm gone.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
See, there's some thoughts brewing.
I think there's been a wave, like in the last year, partially because of the hand grenade with IDFA and other things. Like it disrupted the businesses. AppLovin's a beast. Don't get me wrong. Like the CEO Adam is one of the best CEOs in the business. He just goes for it, and he has no prisoners left behind, or whatever the saying is. But there's been a lot of consolidation, and so with consolidation comes power, which AppLovin is definitely taking advantage of. They bought tons of tools, including MoPub, to consolidate over the last couple of years. I think the prediction, maybe not for this year, but the following year, you're going to see the startups pop up this year. We're already starting to see them. With consolidation comes opportunity. It's true for every business. It's definitely true for ads. And in a down market, which it is, even with AppLovin going up, and we're all feeling it, like that is when you start companies. It's an amazing time to start something. That's one. So you're going to see ad networks pop up and ad businesses, or whatever you want to call them, to try to disrupt the AppLovins, and they're going to succeed. Somebody's going to come out and win and be the next AppLovin. Number two is there are dynamics that are different. Like AppLovin was grown out of just the fact that smartphones started to exist. Google's ad business, not the search ads, came out of AdMob and some other businesses, arguably, that grew out of just the birth of the internet. And some other businesses, Facebook obviously came out of Canvas, but that's total diametric changes in the environment. There are other ones happening. Like I'm kind of waiting for TikTok to do something in this space. They're just super poised to really take advantage of it and to disrupt the industry, or some ad network to take advantage of TikTok to become the next AppLovin. So I don't have a great answer, but I do see a lot of opportunity.
Okay, interesting. Javier, I guess for you guys, interesting, different area, different competitors, different people to compete with. Like, how do you see that market at the moment, and how Google fits within it?
I do agree with Eric. I've been 7 years in the industry, as you said, Ryan. I'm already a veteran. When I was working on the gaming side, we didn't have universal app campaigns. So I remember my team just uploading keywords just to target specific users, right? So it was a big evolution. Back in the days, Facebook was number one. I think it was 2015, 2016. And then for us, it's been mainly just benchmarking against Meta, right? Like the CPAs, all these things. It was mainly the two of us. What I've seen now, and I think this is also due to automation, right? It's many more options. There's way more ad networks than I've ever seen in the past, right? So it's quite common to see studios and mid-size or even smaller studios just to have 5-6 different ad networks at the same time, right? Also, MMPs are helping us a lot to automate this, to have a specific predictive LTVs for each of the ad networks. So I completely agree with Eric. I think we're going to see this more and more, and especially with automation, it's easier for smaller developers or bigger studios to test different source of traffic. And of course, they will have to probably work on specific PLTVs analysis because different traffic has different quality as well. But yeah, I think it's also a moment of opportunity. Definitely, AppLovin is becoming a challenger for us, especially on the ad-funded side. We hear that more and more, right? They work with the buy and sell side to really also support and feed those users on a good way. But yeah, I think it's quite exciting to see what's happening with TikTok in the future and many others to challenge us in the industry.
Philip, you mentioned earlier about some of these games that we were talking about at the beginning being like very marketing informed products, not necessarily like marketing first. Like do these kind of conversations ever factor into like when you're thinking about building or fleshing out or working on games or are these all just different similar UA networks that are part of like a bigger puzzle?
Not quite. I think it'd be great if it was. I mean, at the end of the day, like, can I find an audience for my game, and how specific of an audience can I find for my game? Did these tools let me do that? And I hope they do at some point. Like, if you're in mobile free to play gaming, like you better hope that one of these pays off. You better hope that we figure this out, because it's looking pretty grim, as we were talking about at the top of the hour. It's not looking great. Like I think there was a piece that came out earlier from Dead AI that downloads are down for like the first time ever. It's not good. COVID's gone, guys. It's bad, and we got to get not only back to COVID highs. We want to get beyond COVID highs, and so like we could burn another 3 years just trying to get back to where we were during COVID. So it's not looking good. And I have a hard time seeing the bright side. I mean, even our conversation we're talking about fingerprinting, maybe fingerprinting will like continue to survive, but who thinks this is going to get better? That's a hard bet to make. Who thinks this is going to improve? Who thinks we're going to get better at this stuff? And I hope someone figures it out. I hope someone gives us hope. I hope someone is able to do that, but I just not seeing it right now.
And so, all right, I'll go off book for this one. And like, what do you guys see as the right direction? Like, what are, and I suppose publishers in particular, but maybe this is a message to ad networks and social channels and things too. Like, what does need to change, or what needs to open up, or what conversations need to happen to have that slightly more optimistic future? I'll give you a sec to think on that one. I
guess, Philip, do you think we hit bottom? Because I agree with you that there's a COVID hang where companies overinvested. I mean, where people being laid off is a lot of that is just because a lot of game companies overinvested in fundamentals. I think are we at the bottom of that, or are we still hitting the bottom? Because then it's something to be optimistic about. Because it has to come back and re-regulate. Maybe not at the high of COVID, but it won't be at the low.
So there are two things that strike me. One is I keep going back to timeshare, game played timeshare per week, and we're down from COVID highs. And I keep thinking about like, what is the thing that's gonna get us back to people playing more and more games, spending more and more of their time playing games? And we know there's a long run correlation between time spent playing games and ultimately like the revenue we're able to produce. And I have a hard time solving that equation in my head. Like, what is that thing? What is it? So I struggle with that. I'm not quite sure. Like, are we just going to suddenly make better games that we weren't making before? I don't know. That's not a very satisfying answer. So I would say that's one thing that I find very challenging. And I would say that the second is that I find a lot of the VC plays into content to going to explode very soon. And I say that in the AAA space, and I mean that in the mobile space. There are very few mobile game companies that can generate VC style returns on a pure content basis. I mean, you've got Supercell and maybe Dream Games. I mean, it's pretty slim pickings here. I mean, maybe we could point to Riot, but Riot's really that it was sold on a distribution story. Hey, we're going to be direct to consumer. We're going to have our own launcher. All this stuff. I don't think we've hit bottom. I think there's a lot of VC money that is going to return zero, and that hasn't croaked quite yet. And I think that's coming. But I think more than anything else, it's like how are we going to get back to the time played that we had during COVID? Like that to me is a very long run concern, and I don't see the answer.
I'm really interested to get your perspective. Actually, does PC and console having such a fantastic year last year impact mobile, do you think?
So I've been very interested in kind of the convergence of these worlds. So on one hand, you've got mobile game developers, which are doing more PC SKUs. So if you go to Steam, there's a lot of people just like shitting out their Unreal Engine games into Steam and just letting it rip. I mean, you can still sometimes see like the touch controls. They're really just letting it go. Sometimes you'll see Scopely do, direct SKU. We were talking about Star Trek Fleet Command before the start of this. I mean, you can go to the Scopely website, you can download Star Trek Fleet Command, play on your desktop right now. And then I think you've got these other games which are true dual SKUs like Genshin Impact, which really spans both worlds. And I think that stuff, and Roblox, of course, Fortnite, of course. I think that's very interesting. It's one way you can amortize cost. You can cast a very, very wide net across like the two platforms where all gamers are. I mean, the market's basically 50-50, right? It's half mobile, it's half HD.
Yeah.
And I find that very curious.
Revenue-wise, not numbers-wise, presumably.
Revenue-wise, yep. Yeah. And I find that very curious. And I think we'll begin to see more of that. I thought we'd start to see more HD developers come into mobile. I thought Marvel Snap was going to be the start of that. And it hasn't quite happened. Arc Rumble kind of exploded in their face. It looks like HD developers have a long way to go in really figuring out monetization.
The players strike me as two completely different sets of players, though. There's a real anti-pay-to-win element of PC and console players. And it seems a lot of the ports that I've seen that have moved across mobile to PC and console have really not done well in the reviews section on Steam, that's for sure.
And I think that's fair, but I would say on a generational standpoint, I think those lines are starting to blur. And I really look to Roblox. I really look to Roblox as the really pivoting. I think like the core differentiator has been virtual dual sticks, like those two analog sticks you have on the screen. Like that really has been the generational gap of whether or not I can put an HD game and I can put it on mobile. And it appears that Gen Z is completely comfortable with this. Almost all Roblox games are virtual analog sticks. Yeah. And as that becomes more and more accepted, I think HD is going to have an easier and easier time kind of landing in mobile and being successful.
I think the blocker is the mentality. I'm with you. Like the HD game companies aren't able to do live ops or build games for ops. I've been shocked continuously. Like I get that the player persona will puke on it, but there's just so much money to be made to do free to play console or PC.
Massively. Well, look at Genshin.
Yeah, it's just insane. I mean, Fortnite has kind of tipped their toes into it because they basically have a free to play model. You pay, but then everything else is these seasons. Yeah, and they're really good at it. It's why they're part of the reason their engagement is so long. But they still haven't crossed over, and I don't blame them. I think their user base would puke.
But if you're a mobile developer, I mean, this smells like opportunity. I mean, look at Vampire Survivors. One dev wanted to go out there for $3 and sell a game. Go for it, man. If I'm hobby, I'm going to build a $500 franchise based on this. So like, if they sleep, eat their lunch. And I hope, and I really 100%. Think if you're listening to this, go play games on PC and steal their mechanics. I mean, Hole and Fill, we were talking about top of the hour. Hole and Fill has HD inspiration. There was a game beforehand which had the exact same mechanic. I'd love to see a true like Katamari Damacy type game on mobile too. But go play HD games, steal their mechanics, and do what you do best, which is marketing, live ops, and monetization. It's there for the taking. If they're not going to do it, why not mobile?
I think why not as a game developer too, mobile, like especially a smaller one. Your goal is to take bets. That's how you become VC backed. Like if you want investment, you got to be able to have a big story. Like I'll give kudos to Javi and Google. Like I just downloaded the beta where you can play mobile games on your PC. They've been talking about it for a while, but it looks like they're taking it seriously now. I literally downloaded it this morning. Microsoft has been talking about an Android Google store forever. Eventually they're going to rip the Band-Aid on that one. It's just too much potential to be cross-platform for that reason, not necessarily for the game mechanic or the gameplay, which everybody loves to talk about, but just because you access other users, you can monetize, your UA will be blended, it'll change because it's just a totally different beast to get people to play a game. If Google's able to perform, like the friction to get a game on PC might actually be lower than it is on a mobile phone. That's pretty fascinating as well.
And I think also the maturity on the mobile gaming space, right? We see some big developers who are not finding new opportunities. They're not growing as fast as before. So they try to think beyond mobile, right? So that's also probably one of the reasons that Philip mentioned about why mobile is not growing. That much maybe there are other platforms which are not, Apple or Google Play, where we see gamers just playing. We will see that more coming, right? We know Netflix, we know even YouTube with, like playables, and there's going to be more and more competition, I think, for both Google Play and Apple Store. And it will be new opportunities also for developers to try to get those audiences beyond.
And there's the inverse too, which I also find super interesting, which is mobile developers trying to go to HD. Yeah. So like Scopely's hiring for like a AAA game. Let's see where that goes. Like Stumble Guys is on Xbox. I mean, I worked at Scopely. I mean, I never thought I would see the day where Scopely released a console game. Never in my mind did I ever think Scopely would do something totally like.
Yeah, but then you've got Voodoo and Homer both on Switch now. Like,
yeah, please, that's not real. That's not real stuff. That's not real stuff. That's like a paid $3 game. Please gag me. I don't think that's real. But I would love to see more. Supercell, where's this HD studio that's been in North America forever? Yes. I'd love to see them make some noise. But I'd love to see mobile developers take a shot at HD too. Like it cuts both ways. It's just been slower to go in that direction than the other one.
Let me put it a different way. Like we were talking, the initial question is 2024. This might be more 2025, but part of the reason my current company exists is player experiences everywhere and helping engineers make them better. Like I'm sitting on a Microsoft Surface right now. It may not be the most popular thing, but Apple's entering the fray here too. Like tablets are becoming mobile devices. Like, and you're going to have no choice as a game developer to eventually adopt these platforms. How's that for ammo? Because they're all converging. Like people may be sitting at their desktop because we're able to work hybrid and virtual. But the way you're using playing your content and reading it, it's happening forever. Like we sit in front of our computers on our PCs or our phones. They're the same thing at this point. I sit in front of my Surface because it's a tablet. It's just waiting to be adopted by these game companies.
But then even the PC gaming is changing fundamentally with like Steam Deck and Rogue Ally and all of these mobile devices now, which are becoming more and more popular.
Yes.
Even Xbox like suggested the fact that they may be doing something surrounding that, or alluded to the fact. So I mean, there is a lot more platforms becoming available right now.
They have no choice. Like a TV is a mobile device at this point. Like we have apps that are customers that are running on TVs and they're running on Android. It's the same difference. No choice. Microsoft and Sony, like, I don't know the time frame. This may be a 10-year time frame, but the console is dead in that time frame. It makes no sense. You can run other ways. Their initial idea was just home entertainment system to do TV and everything, cable and content. That they've lost that battle.
Nice. Okay, I could listen to this for a lot longer, but I am definitely not allowed to, and definitely supposed to cut things to an end here. And basically, this has been pretty amazing. I think like just having this desire to chat amongst industry peers here today has been pretty cool. Hopefully, also for my esteemed panelists, it's been enjoyable to chat about. I know we've checkerboarded across a lot of different subjects, hopefully ones that people are interested in. I'm pretty confident we touched on at least one topic that you'd be very interested in. It's been a really interesting chat. I definitely massively appreciate Eric, Adam, Phil, Javier us having a chance to go through all of this today. So yeah, really appreciate you giving us the time, and thanks very much everyone for checking us out and watching.